Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Emerson Center for the Arts and Cultures panel discussion. We are still here, and this is our story. I'm Susan Denson-Guy, the Executive Director from the Emerson. And this is only our second time hosting a virtual event of this size, so we're going to ask for a little grace and latitude as we navigate this virtual forum. If you have technical difficulties this evening, please note that we'll post a full recording of the discussion, including the question and answers, on our YouTube channel early next week. You'll be able to access this via our website and social media platforms. Before we go any further this evening, we'd like to pause. We'd like to acknowledge that the Emerson Center for the Arts and Culture occupies the ancestral, traditional, and contemporary lands of the Apsaalooka, Crow, the Salish Kootenai, Flathead, and the Cheyenne. We honor all of the Indigenous caretakers of these lands, waters, and the elders who lived here before, the Indigenous of today, and the generations to come. We invite all of our non-Indigenous guests to follow the link that we're dropping in the chat and invite you to acknowledge the lands where you're joining us from this evening. At this point, we'd also like to recognize our sponsors who helped make this evening possible. SLAM, Palisade Financial, the Big Sky Journal, Bridger Care, and Pipestem Law. I'd also like to take a moment to thank Dan Simons. Dan's business, Wampumware, is located here in the Emerson, and he's also one of the co-founders of the Social Distance Powwow. Early last summer, I reached out to Dan and I asked him for ideas on how the Emerson could use its platform to help raise voices for social justice that are too often unheard. We discussed a lot of different things that were happening in our world, the murder of George Floyd, COVID, but our conversations kept coming back to the crisis here in Montana of missing and murdered Indigenous people. Our discussions led us to introductions to 11 incredible female Native artists, which led to 2 amazing exhibits that are currently on display here at the Emerson. I encourage you to come in and see the exhibits, Mask Up, and spend some time in our galleries. If you're joining us from a distance, you can also visit our website and take a visual tour of the amazing works that we have here. Tamara, you're great on this slide right here. I just want to let everybody know the flow of the evening. We're joined tonight by 4 panelists. Tom Rodgers, he will moderate the evening for us as well. Mary Kathryn Nagle, Sharon Stewart Peregoy, and Ellie Bundy. Each of the panelists will have the opportunity to present a question throughout the evening. But before we begin the evening, I'd like to introduce Tom Rodgers. He's the president of the Global Indigenous Council, and he'll give us a brief introduction into the video that we will begin this evening with. Hello, Tom.
Hello, Susan. First of all, I want to thank all the other panelists. It's a real honor to share this platform with all of you wonderful advocates and ladies. I'll be like Spencer Tracy. I'll know my lines and not bump into the furniture tonight. And I will keep my words to a minimum. And once again, thank you, Susan, for creating this ironic, teachable moment for all of our viewers. Thank you.
It's our pleasure.
You're about ready to see a clip of a documentary that my colleague and I, Rainbear Stanslast, filmed throughout the state, starting with the Blackfeet Reservation. It is a frontline story. It is a story that we wanted to tell that was impactful and examines a part of Ashley Loring, for some of you might be familiar with her story, and her loss up there on the Blackfeet Reservation. I'm an enrolled member of the Blackfeet tribe, and so we thought it would be powerful to start there. and tell that story of what the intersection of drugs and MMIW can do. We called it Somebody's Daughter, and we chose that word purposely because we needed to appeal to people outside of our circle of humanity. People do not understand us in our culture. We're geographically isolated and culturally isolated. And therefore, I thought, in talking with Rain as we sat down to discuss this at the outset, I said, "Dear Rain, my brother," I said, "let us call it Somebody's Daughter." Because unfortunately, we're heavy into judgment in our society today. And I thought, no matter what walk of life any person chooses, they are always somebody's daughter. And that was the refrain that we chose. And we are going to bring that to the Mall of the Washington, D.C., and we seek to premiere it around the country. We didn't choose it for any film festival or any awards or any monetary remuneration. It was simply to tell an impactful story about our Native women and girls. So thank you very much, Susan, for this time.
Thank you. The video will run about 11 minutes, Tom, and then we'll hand it back to you.
Okay.
It is reported that Ashley was last seen with a man up on Divide. It's actually just a few miles out of Abab. And the man did state that he was with Ashley, and then that he was going to bring her home, but she got a text message that her friend was going to pick her up. VDOG was going to pick her up, and then he said he went to sleep and woke up and she was gone. So when we first started searching, it was reported from the same man that had her up in Divide and was also chasing her. She was running up Highway 89 going towards the Divide turnoff.
Ashley was at a friend's house in Browning, and she left with him. And they were together for 6 days around. And then that she called somebody to come get her. So they went to Divide, and he lives only 7 miles from there.
Ashley, at one time, was out in Birch Creek area, and that there was a fight there. A eyewitness stated that she seen Ashley wearing this sweater, this gray sweater, and we found that sweater. That area wasn't searched, and it was later covered up within 2 weeks of when we found that sweater. It had holes in it, it was ripped up, it had oil stains on it, it had dried blood. But the thing was that we had tips that also stated that Ashley was put in a oil barrel, and that sweater was covered in oil. We found the sweater in between St. Mary's and Bab, right in the middle of the lake area. And it is not that far from the man's house that was last seen with Ashley. It's probably not even a mile away.
But when it came to the investigations, we just weren't very informed by those that were leading those investigations at that time, which was difficult because as in a leadership role and as a sovereign in tribal nation, you'd think that a lot of these things would come through you as leadership for that sovereign nation as a tribe. And unfortunately, that wasn't happening.
I first met with BIA, and I met with that investigator, and I met with him once, and then he said he couldn't help because he was going to a trip to Vegas that he already scheduled. So we weren't going to do anything and not to call him. We searched for 2 days, and then they stopped because of the weekend. That they said that they weren't going to search because nobody's on the payroll. And by then, it took just weeks and weeks to actually talk to BIA. So we had to go out on our own and search and do our own investigation.
We were supposed to go explore the world together, but instead I'm exploring the woods for my sister.
We later found out that the people that were working on Ashley's case were also involved with the suspects, and that hurt Ashley's case there. So.
When Kim Loring talked, it gave me the chills because I was like, she's right. They did fail her, and it wasn't just tribal law enforcement. It wasn't state law enforcement. It wasn't BIA, it wasn't FBI, it was all of them.
We need to demand an immediate investigation into why the law enforcement has failed to provide information, failed to act upon information that they received from the Loring family.
The Blackfeet Indian Reservation is 1.5 million acres. We have currently 18 tribal police officers on duty that patrol the whole reservation 24/7. There's only 2 Bureau of Indian Affairs criminal investigators to cover any major crime that's committed on the Blackfeet Reservation. Just sometimes have to shake my head because of when a major crime is committed on a reservation, our tribal police department responds to it first. And then in turn, they notify the BIA criminal investigator, they come in. And then they're usually assisted by the Federal Bureau of Investigation due to it being on federal lands. Federal Bureau of Investigation doesn't always come up to the actual physical crime scene. So consequently, a lot of their information is taken from the reports that are received from the responding tribal officer and the Bureau of Indian Affairs criminal investigator. So we get a lot of, it's frustrating.
We've got 70,000 Native Americans in Montana. That seems a bit excessive to me to not be able to find a few of them. And I know there's overlapping jurisdictions with tribal police and BIA and potentially FBI. But there's got to be a reason for this. And it isn't a database. I'm telling you that if you've got people on the ground that are following up, and I'm not a law enforcement person, I'm a farmer, but the quicker you can get on it, the better chance you have of finding what's going on. Are we really putting the kind of resources we need? Is the BIA putting the kind of resources? Does the FBI have the kind of resources to be able to get in the Indian country and do the investigation, helping tribal police? But actually, you guys are the lead dogs here. I mean, truthfully, do you have the resources to do it? Do you have the manpower to do it? Because it's not getting done. And if it's not that, it's got to be something else.
We have one suspect that is known to be involved with the MS-13 gang out of Washington. I believe that the reason why Ashley is still missing, or is missing, it is because of meth.
I know the main problem here on this reservation is methamphetamines. And then there was stories about human trafficking, that they sold my daughter. And the people that are involved are associated with people up in Washington, I found out, that do that stuff.
We see now that Montana has a task force on MMIP multi-jurisdictional issues. And it's scary. It's scary because the things that are popping up are things like MS-13, the influences that they're showing. And seeing what's coming in from the western side, from Washington and Oregon, and how it's hitting Montana and going on down the High Line. It is very, very scary. It's unnerving.
The last 5 years, without a doubt, the methamphetamine in Montana is coming from super labs in Mexico. So we don't come across clandestine methamphetamine labs anymore in motel rooms or trailers like we used to. People don't realize the money to be made with methamphetamine. So a cartel can make a pound for about $200. And its first drop in the United States is about $2,000. So they're getting 1,000% profit on each pound. And then if you're from Montana and you have a good connect to California or Vegas or somewhere, you're going to pay probably $2,000 to $3,000 a pound. And then you bring it to Montana and you sell it for $700 to $800 an ounce. So you're going to quadruple your money. And the people that are buying the ounces at that amount are going to say you buy an ounce for $800, you're going to sell the grams at $100. So you're going to triple your money also. And that's without even cutting it.
I'm very concerned about what's happening with organized crime. Unfortunately for the tribal nations, we have the gangs that come into our communities. We have that influence that they have upon our young people. And they basically look at our reservations as recruitment areas because of we're impoverished. And when they come into our communities, our people are high at risk of being recruited. Our young people are.
Hispanic gangs, Sureños, and even Mexican mafia most definitely are operating involved in drug activity in Missoula and on the Flathead Indian Reservation. A lot of people attribute MS-13 to Mexican cartels, and they're totally different. So I think, too, if you have local or resident gang affiliates who've never been anywhere else, when you have a big city gangster that shows up in your hood or your reservation, I think that's alluring, and then they associate with that person and they learn from that person. So would that person take them back to California, and would they be met by open arms? Probably not. But would they use them for drug distribution and connections and getting girls in Montana? Absolutely.
It's hard to fathom because it is such a beautiful area. You wouldn't think that organized crime is coming in here. It is. It is because there's the northern corridor that's coming out of Washington. And with MS-13 being involved in illicit trades of all kinds of activities, bringing in methamphetamine, running weapons, and actually taking young women and basically enslaving them to enhance their drug trade. It's here.
When it comes to human trafficking, demand varies for different types of girls. So there seems to always be a demand for young-looking females, either minors or young-looking adults. But then there also is a demand for Native females, African-American females, and Asian females, and that just varies from area to area. Some of these girls are being exploited on reservations and then taken to the cities.
It's people that are from really marginalized, impoverished communities, vulnerable people. And these traffickers and predators, they prey on these vulnerable people who are already hardshiped. And then for them to be the targets, and it's continuing. Like there's no end in sight right now.
I keep Ashley's story out there in her name and keep searching for her, because there is a Ashley on every reservation in the whole United States. There's a story about a girl going missing, a man going missing, being murdered and not found.
Tom, I'm going to hand it to you.
Okay. With that, I'll be quick. I'll just introduce myself quickly, and then I'll move on to our first panelist. My name is Tom Rodgers. I am from Montana, grew up in Montana. I probably worked on half the reservations in Montana. Spent a lot of time in Browning, and I've been very lucky to be back here in the Washington, D.C. area. I represent Indian country throughout the United States. Had the great fortune of working for Senator Baucus at one time. Was the whistleblower on the Jack Abramoff scandal. Sued the state of Montana successfully for violations of the Voting Rights Act when it came to Native Americans. Did that also in Nevada, and I'm working on Arizona. A lot of opioids litigation on behalf of Indian country. But like I said, you're a fortunate person if you are able to choose the passion in your life and make it your vocation and avocation. And I've been fortunate in both ways. And with that, let's move on to our wonderful, wonderful first panelist. Mary Kathryn, how are you doing today?
I'm very good. I'm very good. Thank you.
Okay, Mary Kathryn, could you tell us a little bit about yourself? Is that possible?
Sure, I'd be very happy to. So, good evening, everyone. My name is Mary Kathryn. I actually also live in the Washington, D.C. area, and I'm a citizen of the Cherokee Nation. And I am a partner at a law firm called Pipestem Law. We are headquartered in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and we have an office here in DC as well. And our focus, we do lots of things. We do, Indian Child Welfare Act cases. We do contract disputes on behalf of tribal clients. And, we do gaming, and we do pretty much anything that a tribal nation, needs. We're happy to serve. But one primary focus of our work has been MMIW. And we've done a lot of work on issues related to violence against Native women, reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act. But we have found, there's just such an incredible need for attorneys to help out on this issue. And so we've gotten we're been very honored as a firm to work with several families, and actually many in Montana, whose daughters or sisters have gone missing or are murdered, and law enforcement chooses to do nothing. And so we've been advocating alongside the families for justice, and will continue to do so.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mary Kathryn.
Mm-hmm.
Mary Kathryn, I'd like to ask you a question. Why are Native women more likely to be murdered than any other population in the United States?
Well, this is a great question, and I think it's an important one, because I think too often when we start to talk about this crisis, it feels very overwhelming. And I think a lot of people are inclined to just say, okay, this is very sad, but what can we do about it? There's nothing tangible in sight. And I think if we step back and understand that there are very clear reasons why this crisis exists, and because we can identify those reasons, we can solve them. And specifically, and so there are very cultural reasons, and I think, you know, probably a lot of people on this webinar tonight understand those cultural reasons. For instance, if you read Sarah Deer's book, The Beginning and End of Rape, then you understand that you know, violence against Native women is sort of the foundation of how the United States began. You know, Sarah cites in her book, which is excellent, excerpts from Christopher Columbus's journal where he's bragging about murdering Indigenous women. So, you know, we've got all these examples over history of what the US Army has done. So we have a culture that accepts and promotes violence against Native women, but we also have a legal framework that allows it to continue. And one primary factor of that legal framework is the Supreme Court's decision in Oliphant, stripping our tribal nations of our inherent criminal jurisdiction to prosecute the majority of the perpetrators of these crimes. And when you take the tribe out of the picture, because that's what Oliphant did in 1978, when the Supreme Court said, no, tribes, you do not get to prosecute crimes that non-Indians commit on tribal lands, you are left with a system where primarily you're looking to the FBI and you're looking to the federal government. And as Senator Tester was stating in the, you know, amazing documentary we just watched an excerpt of, the FBI is doing nothing right now. And it could quite likely be a resource issue. And if it is, I hope the Biden administration fixes that and addresses that. But it's actually kind of insane that all these families, and I know because our law firm represents several of them, they have a very clear understanding of one or two and sometimes three suspects that are highly suspect suspects. The family has evidence, they have knowledge. The FBI won't even talk to them, won't interview them, won't do an investigation. Why? I don't know. I don't understand why. You know, either they don't care, it's not a priority, but there's not political pressure right now to make them do that. And, you know, we have an opportunity with this change in administrations here, but I think that we really have to look at the people who are not investigating these murders. And as a community and as a nation, we have to hold them accountable. And so the FBI is a major piece of it. But you also look over at Bighorn County, for instance, and the fact that, you know, the county there has one of the highest rates per county in the country. And time again, when these Native girls and women are murdered, it's no mystery who did it. Again, there's a very reasonable list of suspects that the family has evidence. You know, I'm thinking of case Sarah Stops Pretty Places in her case. And the family from the beginning was willing to talk to law enforcement, but law enforcement and the Bighorn County Sheriff's Office wouldn't talk to them and blame the victim, which all too often happens, right? They say, well, you know, she probably drank too much. Of course, then the toxicology report comes back, no drugs, no, you know, not enough alcohol to be anything near lethal, right? And so they then switch to a different, you know, decision, but it never gets to a place where they actually investigate the murder. And as long as we're living in a country where we don't hold elected officials like that accountable, and I'm talking about state elected attorney generals, state, you know, county sheriffs, but also, you know, the officials that we elect at the federal level, and who's going to make the FBI do their job. And this is where I think, if you really look at that in that context, we have a country that has stripped tribal nations of their inherent right to prosecute the majority of these crimes. And the state and feds just aren't doing it, and we're not holding them accountable. And we need to get to a place where we can change that. So thank you.
That was excellent, Mary Kathryn. I think for our viewers and our listeners, what Mary Kathryn just laid out was once again, you know, history is initially is tragedy and then it becomes farce. And now we're entering that stage. We learned nothing from 9/11. We learned nothing from the current attack on our capital, because all of these information sources and enforcement services are supposed to not be silos. They are supposed to share information. And because of bureaucratic turf wars, once again, our young Native women and girls are suffering because these institutions of power behave like silos and do not share their resources or their information. So thank you very, very much, Mary Kathryn. That was excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sharon, my sister. Good to see you again. For those of you out there who don't know, Sharon Peregoy, she is if you go to the dictionary and look under leader, you will see an image of her. She is an absolute truth teller. It's humbling to be associated with her, and I mean that sincerely. She has had when we've shared stories about voting rights, she had the power and the leadership to stand alone. And you don't know what it feels like until you stand completely alone, even against your colleagues. The intramural battles are the worst battles. And Sharon, it is an honor to introduce you and your life and your legacy. You're just a woman of grace. So with that, I will be quiet. And Sharon, would you tell us a little bit about your beautiful life?
Aho.
Aki.
Hirage balashe amagushtei chishu biap salagak apha biash chitbagadak biash kamnik bihukalashik. Hina upba bidid dahol dirusesha hogashimuk. Good evening. I'm a Crow tribal member in the Montana State Legislature, and Tom and I have worked on many different things. So thank you for the kind words, Tom. It's good to see you again. This evening, I wanted just to share from my heart and talk about how I got involved in this process. So I guess Tom, we'll just go ahead and jump to the question. You did a good interview, a good introduction. So,
well, Sharon, given the recent state and national awareness on MMIW, MMIP issues, as a county and a reservation with the highest number of MMIW and MMIP issues, how does one get involved? That's number one. And then number two, how has the legislation evolved? So, Sharon?
Thank you, Tom. Just in my own personal journey, just to share with you, approximately 25 years ago, two young Crow women were found in a ditch at an area called Two Lagans fishing area. Their hands were tied behind their back and they were shot in the head. The investigation went nowhere and it became a cold case. As a community member and a Crow woman, it really troubled me. And I've kept that in the back of my mind. And then fast forward and been involved in a lot of different things, aware that we had people that, so this is a historical thing, especially in our area. We've had not only in Bighorn County, the Crow Reservation, but also in the Yellowstone County area and Northern Cheyenne. I got involved around 2015. I was elected to the Montana State Senate in 2009. And so in discussing different issues within our community and also different issues at the legislative time, one of the things that kept coming up over and over again, just like Mary Kathryn said, that meth and the video as well, we're starting to see the rise of drugs, particularly meth, starting to seep into the community. Also, we were beginning to see people going missing. And so and what really woke up, I believe, the community was when a young woman who went missing and was found brutally, badly burned in a field by a farmer in the Bernie area. And she later died. And again, that was, the individuals were found and prosecuted. But it really caused then an uproar within our community, because now it's somebody's daughter again.
Mhm.
And the Crow legislature that I had been interacting with and interfacing with decided to hold a meeting, and they called the DEA, they asked the FBI, they asked the area police to come in and to discuss this issue with them. And we found that the response was not that great. The DEA just basically was looking for leads. The FBI said, we have no resources. The BIA cops acknowledged the fact that there was a problem, but there was not enough officers to cover the area. And so that, as a result of that, the community began to heighten the awareness and begin to question. But we weren't able to move forward in terms of moving those different agencies and entities. Fast forward to 2017, 2018, I was given the opportunity to sit on the state tribal interim committee. And the state tribal interim committee is the legislative arm for the government to government discussions of the legislature. And what we do is we go around to the different reservations, and we interface with the community, we interface with the tribal governments. And so as a result of that, as we were looking at our issues, we identified that the murdered and missing Indigenous women was an issue. And this was something that we wanted to begin to hold hearings across with the different reservations that we were going to be visiting. And so as a result of that, in 2017-18 interim committee, and a lot of the feedback, the frustrations of the families, the frustrations of the BIA cops, and then also the frustrations of the tribal leaders. And so as a result of that, we came in with, through this process, we identified gaps in services. And the gaps in services that we found was basically, there was no link. When a person went missing, there was no, missing adults were not given the same type of timeline as children. And then we also found that it was important to create, in terms of children, we found that there was no repository for photographs of children, and as well as individuals on the whole for when they're being reported missing. Also, we found that there was no coordination or collaboration among the different law enforcement, both state and federal, at the county level, at the and at the federal level, as at the state level. So this was something that we found as well. The other was that it was important to have a individual who would be then identified within the Department of Justice, someone who could then be the point person to begin to develop, to help develop a clearinghouse, to help train the law enforcement, to begin to be that point person within the agency. And so what we did was, as a result of those findings, then we submitted, we developed a series of legislation. The one that hit national news was Hannah's Act, which basically created the House Bill 21, which basically created the not clearinghouse, but the task force comprised of community members from the 8 reservations. Also, it created the LINK program, which was then to establish our own database and to begin to loop that in to the other existing databases across the state and the nation. We also looked at the issue SB 40, also looked at the issue with the photographs for school children, and we were able to have we passed a bill to have that established through OPI. The other was House Bill 54, which basically directed we directed the law enforcement officers across the jurisdictions to collaborate and to coordinate their efforts when they receive a missing person report. And so we changed the law so that when it didn't matter if it was on reservation or off reservation, that once the report was made, that they would then be entered into the system, and so that there would be no lag time, because that was one thing that we found over and over again from the testimonies and the task force recommendations, but the recommendations, excuse me, from the communities that we talked with and families, was that it took up to 4 to 5 days or even weeks for anything to be done. By then, it becomes a cold case because you are, and so time was of essence to be able to begin to find the individuals. And so these were we were successful in passing those bills and beginning to implement 18 months ago this whole process. And so we have had the data now that we needed to substantiate what was going on. We still have some areas that we need to improve on. And so as the task force went across the state and received feedback from the communities, the feedback that we received from them with the interim again in 2018-19, then the state tribal relations continued the study. And so the one area that we weren't able to get any kind of specific information, and I believe we'll have to continue, is the runaway issue, the Indigenous runaway issue, and to be able to get a better grasp on that issue, because the data has shown in the May 2020 report that was produced by the clearinghouse, we found that the majority of the people that have gone missing in 2020 were under the age of 18. And so that smells of human trafficking. It also, and these are things that we have to still get some better answers to. But as a result, what we are doing today, I believe that I hate to put it this way, but we were able to see, even though it was rough in some areas, and it was difficult. We've been able to provide a better coordination amongst the police, the different jurisdictions, and that in the Not Afraid case, even though there was the lag in being able to bring in all the different agencies, the local agencies stepped up, the tribal agencies began to step up, and then others came aboard. And so there was that coordination, which was a little bit better, but it still needs a lot of improvement. And so one of the things that as the state tribal relations, we identified actually 3 bills, which I wound up carrying this session, at the 2021 session. And the first one is House Bill 98. Unfortunately, Hannah's Act had a sunset to it. And so House Bill 98 is a reauthorization of the Montana Missing Indigenous Persons Task Force and the LINK program, Looping in Native Communities Act. And so it's a reauthorization. So HB 98 is a reauthorization of that. HB 35, which was a recommendation by the task force to the strict committee, was the establishing a missing persons review commission. And the commission then would examine the trend, not only trends and patterns along with the task force, but they would be in the bill. We asked that this commission, which would be comprised of a variety of different agencies and entities, tribal entities as well, to begin to take a look at the cold cases, and that they would meet at least twice a year to identify cold cases and then begin to look at reopen those and take a look at them. And then HB 36 is establishing the Missing Persons Response Team Training Grant Program. And so we found that it's important to have the training so that we can then be able to not train only the law enforcement, which happened this past interim, but also begin to train the local response teams along with other entities in order to provide better search and rescue and recovery. And so these are the things that we are doing as a state, as Native legislators within the state of Montana. And we have had the support of the governor, Governor Steve Bullock, the former governor, and we also have the support of the current governor, Gianforte. And so we are, things are moving, but again, we still have so much more to do. So thank you, Tom.
Oh, no, thank you, Sharon. Ladies and gentlemen, what Sharon just described is a catalog of perseverance. We have become so numbed to the fact that the lesson that she just put forth and set forth is America only seems to focus on the big moment, getting into the end zone at the Super Bowl, getting the vaccine at the end of this virus, landing actually on the moon, D-Day. But what they don't see, and they celebrate that, but they don't see the incredible perseverance and work and just simple act of putting on a mask, staying 6 feet away from people, working at midnight, getting up on a Sunday morning or a Saturday morning, time away from their family. Significant legislative accomplishments are not celebrated in those last 2 minutes when you have the ayes and nays and you pass the bill. It is the quiet, noble perseverance And what Sharon just laid out to you, yes, it comes across as then we did this and then we did this. And she speaks of it almost in a very mundane, quiet word. But what she's doing for you, ladies and gentlemen, is she's one step in front of the other, year after year, day after day, and cataloging a life of incredible accomplishment and perseverance. And that is how you affect change. She just gave you a symposium on it. So thank you, Sharon.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom.
Ellie. Ellie, you there?
Yep.
Okay, there you are, Ellie. Ellie Bundy, very nice to meet you. And I would love it if you would have the platform and the stage is yours. If you could tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure, thank you, Tom. First, I would like to thank the event organizers for allowing me the opportunity to share with you this evening. And I would also like to extend a very warm welcome to all of our viewers tonight. Again, my name is Ellie Bundy. I serve as a tribal council member and secretary for the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes of the Flathead Indian Reservation. I was appointed to Montana's Missing Indigenous Persons Task Force in June of 2019 and was just recently appointed to serve as the presiding officer in December. I also work for our local CSKT MMIP work group and am a key member of the team currently working to develop CSKT's MMIP Tribal Community Response Plan. So thank you again for allowing me to be here.
Oh. Well, we want to thank you, your tribe's leadership, the president, Shelley Friant of your tribe, your work. I've worked with you on the Big Sky series, and you guys have just been a case study in how a tribe can identify an issue, seize it, manage it, and work it. And I applaud you for your grace and your work ethic. So thank you.
Thank you.
We have a question for you, Ellie. The Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribe appears to be leading the way, as we were saying, for the tribal effort to address the MMIP crisis. Can you speak to those efforts by your tribe and what you've done and what you hope to do going forward?
Sure. So all of our MMIP activities began back in January of 2019. That's when the CSKT Tribal Council at the time approved a resolution to try to address the issue of MMIP in our community by educating and then establishing a working group. So that group began holding community meetings to identify needs and seek volunteers. So that's when I got involved. There was a community meeting. Shelley Friant, who's our chairwoman now, held a meeting in Arlene. I attended, and it was some of the stories that were shared there by our local tribal police that just stunned me. And living in this community all my life, I really had no idea. And images have just stuck in my head, and that's when you start thinking, this could have been my daughter. This could have been my sister. And how do you sleep at night not engaging? And so that's what keeps me coming back and doing this work. So we also picked up other volunteers along the way there, and it's been this group of amazing people that have done so much since then. We've participated in events to bring about awareness. We've held conferences, presented to community groups and schools as requested, attended vigils and searches, worked with our tribal law enforcement to develop the first set of protocols, just to name a few things. And the hard work of that internal team is what led to so many other opportunities that I'll mention later. So in June of 2019, the Montana Missing Indigenous Persons Task Force was established under then Attorney General Tim Fox. And I was asked by our tribal council, because of my work on the local task force, I wasn't a council member at that time, but I was asked if I would be willing to serve on that committee. So, so I did, and you've heard a lot of what we've done through Sharon's presentation, so I won't touch on that again, but that's been a great honor and a privilege to serve on that team, and I am hopeful that the legislation continues so that we can continue that important work. Also under the Montana Task Force, Sharon also mentioned the Looping in Native Communities Act. We refer to it as the LINK Act. So that one, just to go into a little bit more detail, that one awarded a $25,000 grant to Blackfeet Community College. The law required a $25,000 match, which they got, was generously provided by AT&T. And with those funds, BCC created a network for tribal communities that would share missing persons data, and it allows for a safe, easily accessible online reporting portal. And so that BCC launched their portal November 7th, and the hope is that all tribal communities in Montana will be added to that network within the next year if the legislation to extend the project is granted. CSKT has been asked to be the second tribal community added to that network. And so people would like to take a look at that. There will be a link shared at the end, but it's www.mmipmt.com. And so check that website out. And again, we look forward to eventually having all of our tribal communities linked into that network. One of the biggest things for us lately has been a tribal community response plan. And that first began in November of 2019 when President Trump signed the executive order to create the Presidential Task Force on Missing and Murdered American Indians and Alaska Natives. That's been designated as Operation Lady Justice. They began convening listening sessions and consultations with tribal leaders and citizens on the scope and nature of the issues. And so because of our local efforts with our work group related to this issue, CSKT was selected as the first tribe in the nation to participate in a pilot project with the National Task Force to develop what we're calling a guide for developing a tribal community response plan. And there's 4 protocols to that. We looked at law enforcement, victim services, community outreach, and public and media communications. And we've been so fortunate to have been able to work with Mr. Ernie Wyand, who is Montana's Missing Persons Coordinator. He's just done an amazing job facilitating our response plan, and it's really been invaluable to CSKT. It's brought our team together. We've been able to really, we did have policies established through the work group, but very, very small. And so we've been able to expand on those, bring people together, have in-depth conversations, and really build a strong response plan. And so we're really proud of the work that we're doing and how that's progressing. And one of the greatest things that came from that was that we were able to bring together over 10 different law enforcement agencies who, based on that meeting, have now committed to working under one MMI policy across the board. And so that's all of the different law enforcement agencies that are on our reservation. And then finally, next week, CSKT is partnering in a volunteer engagement program. That's under the International Association of Chiefs of Police, and they work with the COPS office and Operation Lady Justice, and have developed a training focused specifically on volunteer programs in tribal law enforcement agencies. So we're hopeful that that training is going to support us in starting and managing a volunteer program that will specifically support our tribal law enforcement with missing persons cases as needs arise, ranging from clerical, administrative work, all the way up to directing search teams. So really excited about that as well. And that's kind of where we are. Thank you for the opportunity to share that with you.
And Ellie, thank you. once again, I want to compliment CKST for your incredible leadership. What we witnessed tonight is each of you, Sharon, Mary Kathryn, Ellie, you all have your own unique stories. You're each advocates, you're each leaders, but ultimately all of you are teachers. And what you're doing is just an incredible job of teaching our young youth and outside our circle to make them aware of what is occurring in our beautiful state of Montana. And it is a beautiful state, but it has a dark chapter right now that we need to address. So I can't thank you enough for being incredible, incredible teachers. Thank you.
Comments, Susan, quickly. We're going to move into your question for the evening, but as we approach 7 o'clock, 9 o'clock on the East Coast time, I just want to give a shout out to Mary Kathryn, who has to leave. Mom duties call for her at 9 o'clock East Coast time. And, you know, at least for us moms, mom duties rule. So just a special thank you to her before she has to step away for the evening. And also before you do your question, to remind folks to drop a question either in the chat box or in the Q&A, and we'll have some time to answer those here shortly. Thank you for allowing me to interrupt.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. And I'm sorry I have to depart at this moment, but it's bedtime over here on the East Coast. So, but thank you all for all the work that you're doing. And I know we'll all be in touch. So God bless. Good evening.
Thank you. Sorry for the glitch there, Tamara. Back to you, Tom.
No problem. And once again, Mary Kathryn, you had a higher calling, so congrats to you. Once again, my name is Tom Rodgers. And I can't thank you enough for you ladies allowing me, and I mean that in every sense of the word, allowing me to join you in this effort, because your voice is the voice of power and not this male voice. So once again, I thank you for allowing me to share this time with you. We have an addiction problem in this country, and we've had it for years. We've had one with drugs, opiates, meth, fentanyl, and oil. And you've seen what they've done to our society and our cultures. You see what the desire for land has done, what the need, the addiction for oil has done to our water, what it's done to our land, what it's done to our air, what it's done to our climate. And the desire for land and exploration, how it's even led us to this incredible pandemic. The need to develop land that was not supposed to be developed. And leading us to caves filled with bats in Western China, so they could invade our world and they could balance life again. So to connect all those dots and then bring it back to the MMIW crisis, as the documentary seeks to portray, as all of the three ladies joining me on this panel have highlighted, the incessant need of addiction of drugs, of how it moves up from the Mexican cartels and up the West Coast and into Washington and into our state. I see where the current governor now is initiating another drug effort, and what meth has done to us. It enslaves us. It indebts us. And then how do you pay off a debt? What happens then? And oil. Yes, I hear the celebration of the job creation. I hear that what it has done, and I can speak to this and I understand it, because I grew up in Eastern Montana. I know what the Bakken Formation is. I know what it's done for Sydney and Glendive and Williston, North Dakota. I know that firsthand. But we also don't see the price. And that world is coming to an end shortly. We've had the announcement by General Motors of in 2035, all electric cars. Oil went negative last fall. Negative. They were paying you to store it. And what has it done to our women? These huge man camps. Huge issue. All the way from Billings to Rapid City to Minneapolis up to the Great Lakes, and putting these sexually trafficked women on ships. And the hotels that take care of them, the truck stops that enable it, the stores who do not monitor it, they all have their part to play. And they all played, well, not willful intent, but abject negligence. And so if we're going to address this crisis of MMIW, it also has to be a part of the, once again, you cannot have siloed information and you cannot have siloed action. That is critical. It is all a huge tapestry. It's like a Jackson Pollock picture where you can't see it up close, but if you stand back, you can see the patterns. The role that drugs play when they enslave us, and our addiction and our slavery to oil, and what it has done to us as a people. Whether it's a pipeline, whether it's a man camp, and what it's done to our young Native women and girls. So that's a story that has not been told. And we are a country of telling stories, whether it's Mayflower and Manifest Destiny, both myths, both myths. And that is why one thing, ladies, like we did when Sharon and I were together in Helena, Montana, we asked Senator Tester to request a GAO report on measuring the amount of young Native women and girls who are missing. Because if you don't measure it, you don't value it. So he did that. And we'll ask for another GAO report to talk about the man camps, to talk about the role of drugs, because we need that story to be told. Because right now it's just being siloed. People like to think, as that one police officer said in the documentary, our narrative is, oh, it's just a double wide trailer west of Saco, Montana, with some garbage cans. That's the story. That is not the total nor near the accurate story. It's much larger. It's much more interconnected. And so that is why I raise those issues, because you have to, true education is not seeing new things, it's seeing with new eyes. And we need to educate people to see with new eyes, to see that when they support, and we're seeing it now even with mask wearing, your rights end where my impact might hurt somebody else. So your behavior, you buy the drugs, you enable this stuff. You buy the gas, you enable this stuff. You have to see the connection. Your choices in life, your choices impact other people. And we've lost that connection and that realization. And it needs to be reinforced time and time again. So thank you, Susan and ladies, for allowing me this moment to share that with you.
Thank you, Tom. I said it as we were gathering tonight. I'm grateful for the opportunity to have the platform at the Emerson to share this story, and it's one I wish that we never had to share. So thank all of you for sharing your work and your efforts for everybody. I'm going to give Alyssa a moment to gather any questions and remind attendees you're more than welcome to drop questions either in the Q&A box or directly in the chat. And we'll take a few minutes to let folks share their questions, and then for the panel to respond to them. And as Alyssa's doing that, I just want to say one of the things that I keep hearing in this is that these are our families, our sisters, our mothers, our grandmothers, our aunts, our brothers. This is our family. And so as we think about the questions and we go through the evening, I just encourage everybody to be brave. You know, when you see somebody out, to be brave, to make eye contact and to check in with people when you're traveling, especially young people at rest stops and gas stations. Check in with them. Check in with them like you would hope somebody would check in with your son or your daughter, your mother, your aunt in these situations.
When you just highlighted something very quickly, is we are a empathy-starved, compassion-starved society. You do not need to know a Native American to extend the hand, personally.
Yeah.
You do not need to know a gay person to understand and support a gay person's rights. So this thought that, oh, I didn't know that this was a problem until I met somebody or knew somebody. No, inform yourself. There is no higher calling, during the Roman state or the Greek state of being called citizen. You are a citizen of the United States. You should be an informed citizen. And you've heard me say this before, be ashamed to die unless you've done something for humanity. So extend the hand, be empathetic, be compassionate. That's what being a citizen of the United States is about.
I agree. Tamara, if you have the chance and can show us some faces now, would be great. Thank you. I'm going to switch to a gallery view because I think I control the who's who there. And Alyssa, I'm going to hand it over to you, let you unmute yourself. This is Alyssa Cost. She is our education curator for about the next 24 hours till she moves on to her next adventure. And we're grateful to have her with us this evening. Alyssa, do you want to open it up for some questions, please?
Yes, absolutely. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this amazingly educational and important conversation. I will move on. I have 2 questions here in the queue, so I'm just going to jump right in. First is from Miss Grace Bulltail, who we know and love. Grace is also a featured artist in our current exhibit. Her question, whoever would like to answer this, you're welcome to jump in. So I'm just gonna start off. Does the cold case legislation apply to missing Indigenous persons cases? And will this apply to murdered cases as well? If not, what state legislation will address our murdered relatives?
Alyssa, I'll answer that. It addresses both. The commission will be looking at both.
Okay. Anyone else have anything to add on that? Does that answer your question, Grace? You can always follow up if you had additional question there. Next question is from Helen Yamamoto, asking, are there opportunities for people outside of Montana to help? Maybe with search parties? How can people outside of our state help with the issue in our state? Seems to be the question.
Ellie, what do you
Sure.
think?
And I think we were going to cover some of this in our last slide this evening, but there are definitely opportunities to help. I would say encouraging community groups that you might serve in to reach out to somebody to come in and provide awareness events or training, just get a presentation to learn more. Encourage your schools for your students to write reports and educate their peers, bring up the topic in speech and debate classes. People are always welcome to donate financially. We have, billboards that we try to keep up for one of our missing, Jermaine Charlo. Those are $1,000 a pop for like 6 months. And so opportunities to support billboards for our missing is very helpful. I mean, searches as they come up, I would think you're always welcome. I think the more people we can get on the ground helping, hopefully those are being done in trained facilitated ways, so as not to impede law enforcement investigation, but I would think that was always a welcome thing. I don't know if anybody else wants to add to those suggestions. I will probably think of 10 more things as soon as I turn it over.
Ellie, everything that you have said is important. And as far as participating, when an incident does happen, just like with the Not Afraid case, there was an outpouring of individuals that wanted to come and help. And so that was, and we had a variety of people coming from out of state as well, donating their time, bringing in food, truckers stopping off and dropping off supplies. There was just a great outpouring. And so if you see an incident like that, I believe that to be able to contact the folks in charge and any help is welcome, because there's not enough resources to carry out these searches and rescues, and so and so any kind of resources is welcomed.
And
Sharon, thank you. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. Thank you so much for saying that. As I know, part of our learning process is we've leaned in and they're learning more from the artists that are participating with us in the exhibits. We've heard repeatedly that the need, just like you said, for supplies and for things as simple as gas money for families. You know, it's a large space that people are trying to cover. And so just even a few dollars to help cover gas to get people to the different search areas, and food for the folks that are out doing it, making sure everybody has warm clothes if it's in inclement weather so that they can continue the search. And if you're coming from a distance, I'll be the person that says it, donate. You can do that from anywhere, and there's lots of resources and lots of different groups available that need your help, especially in times of crisis. So there's a whole list of resources available that will be available at the end of this discussion. So time is great, your feet are great, but donate.
I did think of one more thing, if I might add. I knew I would. And Sharon can probably speak to the importance of this, but whenever you get the opportunity to testify to our elected officials, take advantage of that. It's the more people we can have in a room to express support for all of the legislation that Sharon spoke to earlier is just invaluable. So use your voices and show up for those.
Just a quick update, all three bills have made it out of the House and will be heard in the Senate. And I haven't received the schedule for that yet, but it'll be coming, they're moving forward. So just wanted to let folks know. And then just quickly, we just found out yesterday, the Montana Community Foundation has informed us that they've established the Snowbird grant, and that will be put up on their website, which I shared, for any assistance that folks would need.
Thank you.
All right, I have one more question here coming through in the chat. What kind of support is available for young people who are aware? Young people who are aware of them, maybe young people who are aware of the missing, or maybe Susan and Ray can elaborate. Yes. Yes. What kind of support is available for young people who are aware of the missing?
Just quickly, what happened in our community was the high school and IHS provided, and different counselor groups provided the students, because the young lady was still in high school, to deal with their grief. And so that's when the community came together. Then we had these different volunteers to provide that. I think for young people, it's important to, and this is one thing that I saw, is that as there, it also brought awareness. But I believe we really need to start looking at the young people, especially with the statistics, that the latest statistics that we have found, that they're targeting younger and younger people. And so the more informed, the more aware, and that if they're able to, and to work together with the local teams is important, but to begin to start looking at programming is important for our young people.
I can add to that as well. Here in some of our school districts, we have like our least school kids who participated in red sand projects, and one of the, I think it was the girls basketball team who, had the red prints on their faces for a game.
Yes.
And they're doing things within the schools. Mission High School football team had an event. And so I think in their own ways, those are healing for students to participate, for them to engage in that way. They're learning, they're supporting one another. Discussions are happening about what it means. So those kinds of things are healing and give them a voice too. So I think those should be encouraged.
One thing additionally, we are such an under-resourced segment of society, and have been since the Europeans first landed on our shores, that you have to engage in kind of an asymmetrical warfare. You do.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have, and let me point out one thing, and Sharon will agree with this. I recoil when I'm told, and this does not apply in any way to Sharon, because Sharon has always had truth in her words. I recoil when a politician tells me that they don't have the money. No, you have different priorities.
Yep.
You have the money. Sharon might remember when we were facing opposition on the legislature and even with the administration, why we couldn't even get $100,000 or $250,000. We had to leak stories to the media.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Asymmetrical warfare.
Yep.
Okay. You're going to tell me falsehoods? I'm going to leak a story on you into the press.
Yeah.
You're going to continue to tell these stories? Well, I'm going to show up at your events and call you out. You need, truth is so rare in our world anymore that when people are faced with it, they don't know what to do. So I would encourage our youth who have zero trust in our institutions, as a matter of polling, and justifiably so. Use your social media, call them out, use your leverage. Lyndon Johnson had a great line, do you have the votes? If you have the votes, you can do anything.
Yep.
So leverage. Whenever, people in positions of power respond to three things: organized money, organized ideas, and organized votes.
Mm-hmm.
Choose one of them, choose two of them. Organize the money. Show up, spend, organize the ideas, and then lead. If they won't lead, tell them to get out of the way and you lead. So thank you very much, Sharon and Ellie, for allowing me to say that.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. I think as we move back in, I didn't see any other questions come up, Alyssa. Let's move into the actionable items. And as Tamara is making a shift, if we could keep the panelists available at the top of the screen and drop in the action items, bring the PowerPoint back up would be great. And I lean into what all of you were saying, and to the question about our youth. As a parent myself and as a parent of boys, that for me, the thing that we do is we teach, right? We have a dialogue, we talk with our children. This isn't a girls' issue. This is a human issue. It isn't a woman's fault for being abducted. It's a human issue, and we have to teach our boys and our men and our society at large that abducting, mistreating our women isn't how we do it. It's not how we live. And so for me, it's a human issue that doesn't rest. The weight of this doesn't rest on our girls. Do that. The hard part for the evening, and not the hard part, the meat of it, the actionable items. And we ask all of our panelists to share things that we can do. And I apologize, I don't know the exact order, so I'm going to ask each of you to lean in. And I know that Mary Kathryn had to step away. So Tom, maybe in her absence, you can help us guide through the action items here. And for Ellie and Sharon to please hop in on the ones that you provided. And if you want to give any extra information around them, please do so.
Well, ladies, Ellie and Sharon, I'll be quick. And like I said, you're on the ground there, and that's what's so much important. Front lines. I love the fact, Sharon, you're out there at Crow Reservation, and Ellie, you're there at Salish Kootenai Reservation, because that's where the battle is being fought, on the front lines, and you're warriors for that. With a message to your young men, I mean, it takes courage to be vulnerable. Courage. And to those young men saying, you know, that, oh, I don't know how to talk about this, or how do I signal my empathy, my compassion? Begin by the sharing of a simple story or a conversation. I'm just turned 60. My generation has failed you. Your generation, the generations to come after, you will be the one who will heal this broken world. You have immense power. Leverage it. Leverage it. As Susan said, this is not a women's crisis or a male's crisis or a generational crisis. It's a humanitarian crisis. Think of it as that way. A humanitarian crisis. Use that empathy, that strength. Empathy is strength. It is not weakness. Showing compassion, shedding a tear, sharing an emotion is not weakness. That is strength to my younger brothers. That is strength. And engage, question people, challenge your so-called leaders. Threaten them with their job loss if need be. And if they don't get out of the way, then run against them.
Yep.
We're witnessing it now with what's happening here in Washington, D.C. on the floor of the United States Senate. People are choosing their career over their country. Choose you. I read obituaries every morning when I get up. They are a testament to the legacy of one's life. How do you want to be remembered? How do you want to be? Oh, well, I was just an accountant for 40 years and I did the books for so. That's not a life. That's a job. How do you want to be remembered? Choose that passionate life. Choose a life worth remembering and to be remembered. That's success. Do that, and you will surprise everyone, but hopefully not yourself. Sharon, Ellie?
Thank you, Tom. I would reiterate the same thing as a clan mother, as now as an elder now as well, that it's time to embrace our traditional behaviors, to shed the colonialistic attitudes, and to begin to reconnect with who we are as Indigenous people. That as Indigenous people, we are a very closely knitted communities. and that the respect for each other as men, as women, that we hold things sacred, and that these things that are sacred are important in terms of how then we interact with one another. These are things that I believe as a tribal college instructor, these are things that I try to teach and integrate even within my own classes, and that to begin to reinvigorate those behaviors, the world viewpoint in our younger generation. They're starving for that information, and so it's important. It's to help them become resilient, and then also to begin to resist these other things. But the most important thing is if they are rooted, I believe, if they're rooted and grounded in who they are, and that they are proud of being an Indigenous person, and that they are connected to wherever they are, whatever the family or the clan are, the people that they hold as family, as they are reconnecting not only to each other, but to Mother Earth, and to these things that we hold sacred as Indigenous people. Then we can begin to heal. We can begin to be strong. The strength is there. The strength is already there. But I believe as elders, to help our young people to begin to capture that, because it's within them. But to help them through different things to bring that out and bring the awareness of who they are. Because it's been said over and over and over again, but that reconnection to our land, that reconnection to our environment, that reconnection to each other is important. We had one of Curly was asked about the land that he defended, and he said very eloquently, the land that you stand on, the dirt that you stand on, is mixed with the blood and the bones and the tears of our people, and that it's just not land. And having that reconnection, we have a strong warrior history. We have a strong history to recapture and to take that and to move forward with it. We do that, we can make change, and we can impact those around us.
Thank you, Sharon. As we're wrapping up this evening, Ellie, did you have anything to add before we close?
Yeah, in closing, I would just like to remind people, please say these gals' names over and over again as you get the opportunity. Remember Jermaine, Ashley, Sarah, Hannah, Savannah. Learn their stories, share their stories. And I think it's just absolutely critical that we humanize this story and this topic as much as possible, and truly know that it could be your daughter, it could be my daughter, my sister, just as easily as it is the ones that it is, like all these girls. They're young, beautiful girls who had hopes and dreams and that have just been taken away. And I also ask that we be cognizant of what those families are going through to lose somebody so tragically, and to really ask yourself what you would need if you were in that situation. What action would you want people to take if it were your relation? And so just be cognizant of that, and those young ladies and the young men, and keep them in your heart. Thank you.
Ellie, that is so beautiful. And I'll imagine It's like that great, beautiful World War I poem about Flanders Fields. At one time they loved, they laughed, they lived, and now they lie below Flanders Field. That last moment of life, that's what motivates me. You just hit it. That last moment of life when they knew it was over, when they knew they were going to die. That is what makes me go, as Sharon does, as you do, Ellie, get up on a Saturday morning, work on a holiday. That is that last moment when they knew that their life was over. That's power. Thank you. Thank you for this beautiful, beautiful evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much to each of you for sharing your stories and your expertise. And thank you for trusting this platform to be a safe space to share that. It's noted and very much appreciated. As I said when we started the evening, this entire conversation will be put on our YouTube channel and we'll put it up next week. I encourage all of you that are watching, if you're able to come see the exhibits, to visit them virtually, if you can't make it here in person, and to remember that this could happen to any of us, and to keep that in mind. Be brave, and make a difference. So thank you. Thank all of you for sharing with us this evening. Safe travels to you, and be safe.